This bar that you are looking at has been one of the most controversial things to come down the pike in CPG in quite some time. This is the David Bar. Just recently raised $75 million on a valuation of 725 million. And David Bar has not been around for very long now. And it is a unique situation in that a lot of emerging CPG founders have been, say, less than pleased about the news, but it's important to keep the full context. So, the co-founder of David Bar is a gentleman by the name of Peter Rahal. Peter is a co-founder of RX Bar. Peter founded it with a gentleman by the name of Jared Smith back in 2013. They came from meager beginnings. They were making the bars in the parents' basement of Peter Rahal's, and they were marketing it to CrossFit gyms and other fitness centers. And 4 years later, in 2017, they hit a big exit. They sold to Kellanova for $600 million. So I think, Jason, one of the things that you touched on last week, I think one of the best quotes here that we've had in the young history of the Demo Guys podcast, you said that, brands out there talking to consultants, they need to ask the question, what brands have you built? And if they don't have an answer, end the conversation. And I think track record speaks volumes in business. And I think that a lot of people that have issues with the David Bar getting such a big investment early on have to understand the fact that when you talk about VC firms and hedge funds, when you talk about those investors, they're sharks. They're sharks, and they care about one thing, which is making money. And Peter Rahal has a track record. He can walk into a pitch meeting and he can just roll out his history with RX Bar and the fact that he sold to Kellanova in 2017 for $600 million. And track record matters. Quite a few years ago, when I worked in the fantasy sports industry, I sold a small website that I was running to a larger company called fanball.com. This was in the late 90s, and I was able to meet a couple of the investors in fanball.com. And Fanball, a fantasy sports content company, they had a very charismatic, skilled CEO by the name of Rob Fithian. And I was able to talk to the investors, the two of the biggest investors in fanball.com. And the one said something that has stood out to me all these years. And I asked him, why did he decide to get involved with Rob and Fanball? What was the outlook that he saw for fantasy sports? And he said, look, he goes, I don't invest in companies, I invest in people. And I've talked to other investors over the years that have that same mentality. The investor believed in Rob, he believed in Rob's vision, and he invested in Rob more than he did in Fanball. And I think that you look at this fast investment in David Bar, and I think you're looking at, a VC firm that really believes in Peter and Peter's vision, and they are betting big. It is a big swing. Jason, I want to, don't want to hog the mic here. I want to turn it over to you for some of your initial thoughts here.
I mean, it's hard to even read numbers like that and grasp it because it's such a fast. I mean, we're talking September 2024. This launched. That's a small time, and and just reading through the ingredients and things like that, and some of the questions about Epogee or Epogee or whatever you want to call it. There's going to be, and now there's a lawsuit about it. There's just a lot going on, and I feel like that's a big evaluation and a lot of money to just take into something that's so new to the market still. And given, just at the ingredients itself, I know that's not going to pass the test in a lot of major natural retailers in the country. So they're not going to be able to get distribution in those kinds of those in retail in those areas. I doubt that's even the target, obviously. But kudos, honestly. What a genius move! Create a better for you bar, basically just by changing the label, just scaled really quickly, and now here we go again. So.
The macros are impressive. The ingredients not as universally beloved. And we'll talk about the ingredients. Jason and I are going to try David Bar on the air. Jason, I don't know if you have your David Bar with you. I've got one. All right. So we'll do the taste test in a little bit, and we will get into an ingredient discussion. But Jason, you made a good point. It is kind of surprising to get this large of an investment since September 2024. but there are some numbers there. I did some research, and even though David Barr is only 9 months old, there are reports out there that they've done $200,000 in direct-to-consumer orders in 6 months. They are expecting $100 million in sales in year one, which is pretty impressive. And there was a 6-week period in which they reportedly sold 1 million bars. So there are some numbers there. This isn't something that's just coming out of the woodwork. And this round of investment their round A came from Green Oaks, and then also Valor Equity Partners, some serious players in the game. And that valuation, as I mentioned earlier, that $75 million investment is, now the post-investment valuation of the company is $725 million, which, for 9 months is astronomical. But I think that a lot of emerging CPG owners that, for lack of a better term, I would say are hating on this, should see it from a different perspective, from a macro scale, not a micro scale. And, one of the things that I always believe in is that all boats rise underneath a high tide. This is a speculative investment on many levels. And we saw a lot of these types of investments, not just in CPG, but in a lot of other industries as well, pre-COVID. And things changed during COVID. The way companies did business, especially VC firms and hedge funds, they invested in a lot of businesses. And during COVID, pre-COVID, the mentality was they wanted to be a Facebook or Amazon. They wanted to create a critical mass of users. And it was just build, 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 grow, grow, grow. Don't worry about bottom line profits. Let's focus on top line growth. And overnight during COVID, that changed. And almost literally overnight, which is tough to do to a company that's structured for growth and top line revenue versus bottom line. You can't just flip a switch. And that's what happened to a lot of companies during COVID. That switch got flipped by their board of investors. And that's why we saw so many layoffs. It just, that's the way it works. It's spreadsheet math at that point. To become a profitable company overnight, it doesn't work. So you start cutting indiscriminately. Investments based on speculation for if you're an entrepreneur and you're a founder, this is a great thing. It's going to make raising money a lot easier. So, if this becomes an arms race where other VC firms and other hedge funds look at this investment that's been made into David Barr and suddenly they start, scratching their heads saying, wait a minute, is there money that we're leaving on the table in CPG? Should we get involved? Let's start looking at some targets as well. I think this is a great thing for CPG, emerging brand founders. And I think that hopefully this will lead to a opening of more capital. I've talked to a lot of founders over the last year, and a lot of, one of the prevailing themes has been it is very hard to raise capital right now. And as an emerging brand, as a startup, that is how you survive initially in your first 1 to 3 years. So I'm very actually glad that this investment's been made. I see it as a positive. I don't see it as a negative. Now, Jason, also wanted to talk about, you mentioned Epogee or Epogee, that ingredient. It's a proprietary ingredient. And that was a very bold move for David Barr to secure this investment and then leverage a great deal of that capital into buying one of their proprietary ingredient providers. And the way I would kind of maybe translate this in layman's terms to some of our listeners that may not be as educated on these topics, I'll use an example, Cognizant. More people might be familiar with Cognizant than Epogee. Cognizant is a proprietary brain supplement. If you've listened to BevNet, the BevNet podcast, I'm sure you've heard Ray Latif do those live reads for Cognizant many a times. And Cognizant, even though it's proprietary, if you get a licensing agreement, you can put it into your product. Karma Water, Centrum are just two brands out there that have struck deals with Cognizant and include it in some of their products. So I guess the analogy I would make is that, hey, Jason and I, if we decided to start a product called Brain Water, and we went out and we hit a licensing deal with Cognizant and we started promoting it in our products, and let's say it was working, sales were great, and then Jason and I said, you know what? This Cognizant thing is a gold mine for us. What if we raise some money and bought Cognizant? What if we owned Cognizant and then we acquire it, and then we tell companies like Karma Water and Centrum, and we say, hey, we now own Cognizant. You guys are out. You guys cannot use it anymore. And if you've got a production run scheduled in 2 weeks from now, tough luck. You better figure something out. You better reformulate within the next 2 weeks, because if we find out that you do a production run with our proprietary ingredient that we now own, we're going to slap an injunction on you, and all that product that you paid to have manufactured that could be headed to Whole Foods, could be headed to Costco. We're going to slap an injunction, and those trucks are going to be stopped dead in their tracks. And I think that's why we've seen that lawsuit, that the news came out about that lawsuit yesterday, because there are a lot of products that use EPG. Nick's Ice Cream is the one that was most familiar to me. Legion Snacks, Snack Owl Kettle Chips. So there's a lot of brands out there that are suddenly, left in the cold, and they got hit with a gut punch out of nowhere. And this lawsuit, I think, is a way for them to answer back to that gut punch. And it's a very bold move, and it's going to be up to the lawyers to figure out. Jason and I are not lawyers, so I don't know if what David has done is truly monopolistic, or if it's just a great capitalist maneuver that's going to allow them to really grow at an even faster rate. But Jason, do you have any thoughts on the very aggressive, bold move by David Barr to go out and acquire, their one of their ingredient suppliers?
I mean, I have my own personal opinion about it. I feel like it's creating somewhat of a monopoly situation. And is that a fair tactic? I mean, we could definitely go through that for over a half hour here on the call. That said, it's a smart move if you're trying to control your market and really, saturate it. Let's just talk about the ingredient itself for a minute. So this has not been on the market that long. It is very interesting how it's made in itself. It's usually made from some kind of oil and some kind of fat, obviously, and it's it removes certain parts. And I don't know the exact science behind it, and I can't talk about it enough to be dangerous. But I just read enough about it to question it, just only because I've been on this earth 50 years, and I've seen a lot of products like this come along, Alestra, a bunch of others, and I've went through a lot of protein fads, right? We went through keto. We went through so many different, Atkins, everyone else, these high protein, it doesn't matter what you're eating, just as long as you're consuming large amounts of protein. And, I worry about people's kidneys. I worry about people's longevity. I have a degree in nutrition. I just know how your body works. Our bodies are meant to consume fat, protein, and carbohydrates. It's just, our bodies are just designed that way. I think it's a great marketing thing. I think the 28 grams of protein for 150 calories is awesome for someone who's really just trying to focus on protein. But I always like try to bring up, hey, quality of ingredients too. 4 ounces, 4 ounces of turkey is 24 grams of protein and 1 gram of fat. So, it's a trade-off. Obviously, it's much more convenient to buy a David Barr. So I don't want to go too far in the weeds on this. I think it's neat. I think it's new. I think buying it and then controlling it in the market is somewhat of an unfair move, in my opinion. But, that's just my opinion. It's up to the lawyers to decide. So,
and it's the macros are tremendous. 28. You look at the label; it's right there. They know they've got something. 28 grams of protein, 150 calories, 0 grams of sugar. I'm gonna dig into mine, and we'll talk about the ingredients. But full disclosure, I bought a couple last week, and I thought we were gonna, try it last week, and we were asked not to. We were asked to wait a week, and I said, all right, let's be good neighbors, and CPG will wait. But I was so curious about the bar. I tried the birthday cake bar last week, so I actually have sampled a David Barr before. But this is my first time trying the fudge bar. I'm gonna break into this right now.
First time trying it as well for the fudge. Let's see here. The fudge brownie flavored bar is what it's called. This is the texture, just visually. You can see it looks like, it looks pretty delicious in my opinion. Like all those nuts in there, it looks really good. So whatever those things are.
I should probably figure out what the things are. Now, so from a macro perspective, it's an A plus. And I think from a taste perspective, I loved the birthday cake. I thought it was great. I was, truth be told, I was never an RX bar guy. I tried the bars; it would stick to my teeth. I didn't like the texture. This is a way better texture than RX bar, better taste profile, in my opinion. But we've got to, we can't ignore the fact that, hey, one of the ingredients on here is sucralose, which, is a hot button issue. Sucralose is essentially Splenda. It's a lab created sweetener, 0 calorie sweetener that does not register as sugar, but it is created in a lab. And, for some people like me, I sometimes have short-term issues with it. When I tried to drink Celsius back in the day, whenever I drank a Celsius, it felt like there was a knife in my stomach. And I attribute that probably to the sucralose. Yet when I would try an Alani, which also has sucralose, I felt fine. So I don't know if it's just how the sucralose is processed. But then I did further research, because I thought, oh, well, if I try something and there's no short-term impact, maybe I shouldn't make a big deal about sucralose. Does it have any long-term, impact? And I did some research, and there are some theories out there that long-term consumption of sucralose at a high level could create, gut biome issues. So I'm not a sucralose guy, Jason. I don't know how you feel about sucralose, though.
I don't like sucralose. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't like any of those types of fake sugars. It really tricks your body and your brain to crave more carbohydrates and sugars in the long run. It's not been proven to help anyone. And let's also call out the fact there's also aspartame in these. There's also artificial flavors in these. There's also a lot of things that, most of the people that I know in CPG in the better for you world would just be like, wow, this is a real major play on just trying to scale something and sell it. Because I think for someone who created RX bar, which in my opinion to me is far superior to this bar,
oh, wow.
I will eat an RX bar hands down over this texture in a heartbeat. That's just my opinion. And I feel better about the ingredients, so I just feel better about it altogether. I don't care if it's 12 grams of protein. I know how much my body is going to absorb in one sitting. It's probably not going to absorb 28 grams of protein. I'm just going to be honest. It's pretty difficult for your body to assimilate that much protein in one sitting really quickly. And I'm going to be a lot more satiated from an RX bar with the fat and a little bit of carbohydrates and healthy fibers and things like that. Just to say that out loud, because I obviously am a little bit more engaged in my actual nutrition than just trying to count out macros all day. 50 years old, you're just really trying to maintain standing up at this point. But yeah, I mean, honestly, taste, texture wise, I can't say anything bad about it. I would eat it. It's good. I got to be honest. I actually opened this earlier today. My wife was going to school. She's on GLP-1 drugs, and this is the perfect marketed bar for her. And she tried it, and she didn't hate it either. So it's going to meet the demand of a lot of people who are looking for that kind of item. So,
and at a $725 million valuation, the investors they're swinging big here. Yeah. And to put that in perspective, if David Barr sold tomorrow for $725 million, there would be the investors would probably make very little profit, if any. So I got to think that they're targeting an exit within the next, 3 or 4 years, and they're probably going to be looking for 1.5 billion to 2 billion. This is a big swing. They're taking a big chance, and I like big swings in CPG. I'm a capitalist. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm glad to see that somebody's taking a big bet on this. And, Peter Rahal is a guy that you'd want to bet on. He's got the track record, as I talked about earlier. And then we're going to close here to our final segment. We are the Demo Guys podcast. So I do want to talk about demos. And Jason and I want to remind everybody that next Wednesday, this is a program announcement as well, we will not be on at the usual time. Next Wednesday, June 11th, we will not be on at 8:30 a.m. We're doing a special 1-hour show. 7 p.m. June 11th. It's going to be on LinkedIn Live. And Jason and I are going to talk about, how to build a successful and robust demo program. We're going to talk about, inside strategies that we've learned over the years that we've been in field marketing and CPG. And we're going to share that with everybody in the industry free of charge. So we're looking forward to seeing everybody next Wednesday night, 7 p.m. LinkedIn Live. If you have any questions or need more information on how to access the show, just let us know. It is free to access. And we are going to try to incorporate, viewer questions. I'm going to delve into that this week, figure out the technology here. As I've mentioned in the past, this is all very new for me. Running running a live podcast on LinkedIn and uploading it to YouTube, learning a lot of new things. So we'll figure out how to incorporate interactivity for next week's show at 7 p.m. But looking forward to seeing everybody there. But we'll give you a little preview. I want to give everybody a little preview here. And, one of the things that I talk about with brand founders this time of year are the differences, Jason, between sampling in the summer versus other months. Summer is a great time to sample. It's a great time to get out there and promote your product, when the weather is warmer and more people potentially are in the stores. But there are some inherent challenges that I have faced both as a agency owner and then even when I was just a brand ambassador. When I started out 10 years ago, both Jason and I live in the greater Philadelphia area. And in the greater Philadelphia area, when you're in areas of affluence, a lot of people go to what's called the Jersey Shore. They either own shore houses or they have friends that have houses or they rent Airbnbs or they rent hotels and they're there on the weekend. And a lot of the stores in higher economic areas empty out on the weekends, which is the opposite of what you see during the other months of the year. So, Jason, is this something you've experienced not only in the greater Philadelphia, but as someone that has run national demo programs? Are there adjustments that you've had to make to accommodate different buying habits, different shopping habits that could take place in the summer?
No, that's a great question. And yes, absolutely. So, and what Sam alludes to here is, you really kind of have to figure out a different kind of timing strategy around your demos. You can rely on weekends pretty much any time of the year, but in the summer, it is going to be softer a lot of times for the reasons that Sam mentioned. So a lot of times I'll have our team shift to more weeknights, that 3 to 7. And now you also have to realize that we're selling a perishable item. So it's a lot easier to get multiple units sold in the afternoon and night because most people are going home from work or they're going home from picking up their kids from school. They're going home. They're going to go to a refrigerator when they're just there on their lunch break. That's always a challenge I have to face. So, weekdays typically tend to be very light for us on demos, but when it's the summertime, you really have to be cognizant of not only the weekends, but the holidays around those weekends. And Memorial Day was the perfect weekend example because it's going into the summer. And Memorial Day, we barely ran any demos, and even that weekend of the Memorial Day weekend, only because of that fact. Like you're going to have a lot less foot traffic. Obviously, people are going to still be shopping in the stores. I'm not saying don't do demos. I'm just saying hold your expectations, but definitely target that Friday and that following Tuesday because you're going to get a ton of people stocking up to go to the beach, to go to the shore, to go to the mountains, to their mountain retreat, wherever they're going with their family, wherever you are in the country. Obviously, the Midwest doesn't have beaches, but it's the same scenario. There's lakes, there's all kinds of activities going on at those times. And then that following Tuesday is a game changer because people are going to be like, well, we didn't get grocery shopping, ran out of all our food, got home late on Monday night, didn't have time to go to the grocery store. And here we are on Tuesday, and it's usually a really good time to go sell something.
And another, thing that I've learned, because I've had a couple clients that were of the ice cream or frozen treat novelty variety. And if you are an emerging CPG founder that's just that has one of those frozen items that go great in the summer, and you're just now getting into the sales and field marketing aspect, you just launched your company, you're just entering the game, whatever budget you have for field marketing and demos, 90% of that should be spent during the summer because you're saying it's hard to sell ice cream in the fall and winter months. You're going to get, that's just when you're going to get your selling volume is going to be in the spring and summer. And it's tough for emerging ice cream novelty brands because their sales are still evaluated by buyers in November, December, January, and February. But that's not a good time to demo. So it's a challenge for them. They've got to figure out how to drive sales during those winter months. But really, you got to get ahead of the game. And when you go into the spring and summer, just got to load up. And I would say during, June, July, and August, 90% of your budget should be exhausted there. And then one other thing I want to talk about, Jason, hot foods, traditional hot foods, what do you think about demoing those in the summer?
Like I said, I'm never against doing demos any time of the year, only because no matter what, you need to get trial and awareness. And sometimes in the summer, a lot of brands will go away from doing sampling, and it gives you a lot more audience to share. So that's actually to your advantage in some ways. That said, the cooking demos can be tough in the summer. If you're dealing with heat, a lot of people don't want to eat anything heavy, and they'll just kind of say, all right, warm, but you nailed it on the ice cream and the cold and any beverages, anything like that sample incredibly well in the summer. I mean, who's not going to want something refreshing to drink when they're going through the store for an hour and they've been shopping all day, So, tactics are, know your product, know timing around your product. But also, I think every brand, come August, I don't care what your item is, start ramping up your demos, because that back to school time is real. You're going to have a lot of people coming back to the registers fast. And a lot of people looking for unique and different items for their kids or whatever reason, or if they're in need of a change, or if they're going to school. So it's a really good time to promote your product and be in the store selling it.
Now, let's close out and talk about scheduling in the summer. When I say scheduling the talent, the brand ambassador, but also getting the demo slot with the store. What are some of the challenges that you potentially have faced when you've operated large-scale national field marketing campaigns with just getting the right brand ambassador in the right store?
It's the challenge that you face every time you have the right brand ambassador. You always have to deal with situations, and there are certain aspects to every retailer. So some can be very retailer specific. I'll just take Whole Foods for example. Because I'm saying this, a lot of brands are now getting into demos. Because Sam and I are discussing demos, we're showing the results, we're showing the growth. It's because it's growing at a rate that nobody could even expect it for a brand that's been on the market for 12 years. Those things are real. That's real data. It's real experience. What I would say is, I'd go to the point where, what do you think, Sam? What's your take?
I think lead time this time of year is critical. For example, operating as an agency, I will have brands sometimes come to me in November, December. They have a little bit of budget left for the year. They want to exhaust the budget, and they'll say, hey, we want these demos to go 2 weeks from now. And, I always get panicked when they present that to me and said, hey, and I say, hey, let me see who's available, what we can do, what stores we can get into. And surprisingly, I can get A+ brand ambassadors in November and December on very short notice. Yeah. But the best talent books up fast, and the concentration of demo activity and field marketing activity for most brands is during the spring and summer months. And you have to be very methodical, and you have to be well planned out in order to operate your demo campaign at an optimum level when you go in the summer. If you want to try something on 2 weeks notice, you can try, but a lot of the best brand ambassadors out there will already have bookings because field marketing activity has gone up. Also, you mentioned Whole Foods, Jason. Scheduling is another issue. If you want the prime time, most desirable demo slots in the Whole Foods portal, you might be able to, in November, December, and January, be able to get good slots on short notice. But bookings go fast in the summer. And if you're not ahead of the game, if you're behind the 8 ball and you try to launch something on 2-3 weeks notice, you may have to do demos on Tuesdays and Wednesdays from 3 to 7. Every store is different. Some stores, they do have good availability on the weekends, but usually those are the lesser volume stores. The top volume stores in the Whole Foods chain, you've got to be on that portal when the new batch of availability comes out on Monday, because that's how the portal works with Whole Foods. Anything inside of 2 weeks gets blacked out, and you can't book outside of 6 weeks. So there's that 4-week window, that 4-week donut hole. You've got to be first. You've got to Monday morning at 9 a.m. If you want the best selection of time slots, you've got to check the new availability that comes out Monday at 9 a.m. because the summer books up fast, not only for the demo slots, but also the talent as well. I think, Jason, you're in a little bit of a different situation on the brand side because you have your team, you keep them active, you keep them busy. Ithaca is their number one priority. But when you look at it from an agency perspective, my brand ambassadors, if I have work for them, they're committed to working for us. We're their priority. But if I don't have something for them, they've got to pay their bills. They're talking to other brands and other agencies and trying to keep their dance card as full as possible. And the demand is higher than ever in the spring and summer months.
And I still risk that too, Sam. I do have a team, but at the end of the day, they're free to go work for another brand if they want to. I'm never going to tell them not to. If they want to make some extra money, that's on their time. I appreciate that. But that's a huge thing to call out here. And so just so you guys know, Sam and I don't rehearse this. We just get on these calls and basically talk every morning so far. We're just learning this as we go. And I didn't want to step on his toes, but that's exactly what, for anyone who's never scheduled a demo in Whole Foods, there's a third-party portal. It's called Interactions. You have to schedule them in. You have a 2-week window. So if I want to schedule demos today, the earliest I can schedule it is 2 weeks from today, but the longest I can schedule it out is 6 weeks from today. So I have to get it within that 4-week window Sam's talking about. And as he mentioned, everybody on Monday is on there trying to get the best times, the best stores where they can get people in, including myself. I have to get my team's anticipated schedule a month in advance just to make sure that they're ready to go a month ahead. It's a huge, if you go into demos without any plan, you just will not be successful. But if you tune in on June 11th and listen to Sam and I talk to you guys for an hour about how to build a demo program, which I promise will be a little bit more tuned in than this is, you're going to learn a lot because we're going to share all the little details a lot of brands just don't understand or don't know about.
And we look forward to seeing everybody next Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern time on LinkedIn Live. Jason and I are going to break it down for you, how to build a successful demo program. But we've kind of reached our limit here. I know, Jason, you probably got to catch a flight here in a couple hours, but I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. We had a little bit of technical issues at the beginning. Again, we're going to get it right. Still new to this. Also, I want to thank, before we go, I want to thank our one of our producers, Lauren Wall. Lauren does some great work for me on the brand ambassador consultant side, but Lauren also is now helping out with the Demo Guys podcast. Some of you might be familiar with our clips that we post on Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube Shorts. We post these clips to kind of promote the show, try to drive more listenership, viewership to the main show, the full show. And Lauren has been instrumental in getting those clips ready for us. So Lauren, I know you're listening. I want to thank you for all your help there. I appreciate it. And we will see you next week. We're not going to see you next Wednesday at 8:30 a.m. We're going to see you next Wednesday night, 7 p.m., hour-long special webinar. Look forward to seeing you then. Thank you, Jason. I'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, everyone.